Okay, it is Thursday, February the 4th, and it's about 8:33 p.m. And welcome to our final lecture for contemporary issues in criminal justice. And that is week 6. And no, it's not week 6 yet, it's week 5, but we're doing this special session because of the fact that, as you know, um, we will be completing this course on Tuesday night. So I'm going to go forth and share my screen. This session may not last long, but we're going to make sure we cover everything for week 6. So let me share my screen. Okay. Hope everybody's doing okay. It's a lot of snow going on here in Chicago. Lots of snow. And here we go. You see, oh yeah, I know you guys up there are getting it pretty bad there in Packerland. Yeah, they don't allow me up there because when I come up there, I end up wearing um, things that say bears on it. So they won't let me come up there. Matter of fact, I laughed because Rasmussen inadvertently in 2014 put my name down as the state program coordinator for Illinois and Wisconsin. I said, oh no, I only just have Illinois. And at that time, Shauna Freilich, I don't know if you know that name or not, but Shauna is over the paralegal program. But she originally was a state program coordinator for the School of Justice Studies in Wisconsin. And yep, I think Shauna is based out of Green Bay. I think that's where she is. But yep. So we will see what happens. It's up there. You guys probably got a whole bunch of freezing weather too, as well as snow up there. So, okay. So you can see that week 6 lecture is taking place today, Thursday the 4th at 8:30 p.m. And for the final time, let's look at the calendar. You can see here's where we are. Your written assignments. Well, this actually, none of this applies before that, but this week actually will start with on the 8th, complete the activities, and correctional philosophies is, if I can learn how to spell, uh, let's see, how about if I take, there we go, let's say that correctly. All right, there we go. And then your assignments will be due by Tuesday. And tells you that it ends at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard on the 9th. And then your written assignment, rehabilitation. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Your initial post, rehabilitation improvements. And then your reply post, rehabilitation improvements. Both are due on the 9th. Okay. So those are all the things. So let's get right to it. Let's close the course tools. And let's look at the assignment. So rehabilitation is the topic, one of my favorite areas. I talk about it all the time. I talk about the effectiveness of rehabilitation. You were in my corrections class, I think, right? Were you in my corrections class? Yeah. When you were in the corrections class, was it 5.5 weeks, or it was 11 weeks, wasn't it? Was it 11 weeks? Yeah, that was when you had to do that project, remember, um, on an area, and remember the 4 areas: probation, parole, prison, or jail. And I reminded everybody over and over that there were only 4 aspects of it. And so I talked about how the key thing that we want to try to do with people is to get them rehabilitated, because they would end up um, being recidivists, repeat offenders, and constantly finding themselves going around back over and around. And I think I might even pointed out how I represented people starting with my career when I practiced in '78, all the way till the time I retired near 2000, that I represented people in multiple crimes, because they would get in trouble, um, and if I had to plead them guilty, or they were found guilty, though 90% of my clients that I had trials were found not guilty, but the 10% that did not, um, they would get back in trouble again. So, and then even some of the people that I was successful didn't learn a lesson. So, but the key thing from the time you go into prison till the time you come out is to get individuals rehabilitated. So some people say it's impossible, as it says, to rehabilitate an offender and make them productive citizens, but that's not true. I don't agree with that, because as I've said many times, that one of the major issues that's involved with individuals that result in individuals being incarcerated falls into one of these categories right here in module one, in point 1. Conduct research using the resource from this module, as well as the library Rasmussen, to examine techniques being used to treat mental illness. That's a big area. Addiction, lack of education. I was going to say lack of employment, but these are the big 3, especially addiction, um, primarily drug addiction. Alcohol addiction is aspect of it too. And unless you address these issues and you provide resources for the individuals to help them, then they're going to be recidivists or repeat offenders, especially drug addiction. If you give a person a longer sentence, it's not going to resolve their issue unless you provide resources to address the addiction itself. Same thing with mental illness. And then I've often said there are individuals who are um, what we call double dangerous, and that's because they have mental illness and addiction, either alcohol or drugs, but commonly it's mental illness and drug addiction. Very deadly um, um, things that could cause those individuals to do things. And then we have to make sure that it's in the best interest of society and the safety of our community to treat those people for these issues. Education. I have shared with my students in my classes about a program that I worked with when I was practicing law at the criminal courts building, main criminal court building in Cook County, Illinois, called the Layton Court Building, where my mentor, the late R. Eugene Pincham, who was a dynamite lawyer, powerful lawyer, and taught me a lot of things about being a good criminal defense lawyer. In fact, he was the one that suggested to me, when I told you my story while I was in law school, that if I wanted to learn about the criminal justice system, that I would be a defense attorney. And with my background of what I had gone through, that sounded kind of odd, but I took him up on it. But in his courtroom, room 702 of that building, um, he organized a program called Probation Challenge. And you can Google it, Probation Challenge. And in that program, individuals who came before him who uh, were involved with nonviolent offenses, and it was determined that those individuals, many of them, quite a few of them, did not have a high school diploma. And so he offered the option for those individuals to get into the program, attend classes at a school that's a junior college called Olive Harvey College in Chicago, part of the city college system, where they pursued their GEDs and general education diploma. And if they came back before him after obtaining that GED, he would dismiss the charges against them. Well, we discovered that those individuals who obtained those GEDs, some went on and got their diplomas, and then also continued on to junior college in that same building and received associate's degrees in various fields. And some went on to four-year institutions, and at least one we know went on to become a lawyer. And so my point is that it benefited those individuals because it rehabilitated those individuals. It helped them. Now, not all, but most of the people in that program that happened, probably 95 or higher percentage did that. And I have a statement that I make all the time. It is cheaper to educate than to incarcerate, because if you incarcerate individuals, you also have to feed them, you have to shelter them, you have to clothe them. You also have to pay correction officers and other individuals to treat those people while in that system. So individuals are also given the opportunity to get second chance programs where they're involved with after they get out to get them reintegrated into the community by giving them trades such as barbers, carpenters, electrician, auto mechanics, just to name a few. And so evidence-based practices that we've decided that we try to work is to help individuals by providing resources to help these individuals. Number two, if you can, conduct a personal phone interview with a warden, prison administrator, or a prison official to determine what practices are currently being used to treat these populations within the confines of the prison. You don't, if you're not able to, don't worry about it. Just conduct the research, especially with this short week coming up. So don't worry about that. It Moses says, if possible. Then develop two additional methods by which you think rehabilitation can be accomplished within a prison with resources from the community that individuals can participate in for nonviolent offenders. One of them I know is faith-based. Some are community organizations, such as you might have a person that deals with if they're dealing with alcohol, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and other organizations within the community um, to help those individuals. And remember, we're talking about nonviolent offenders. So your goal is in a 2 to 3 page paper, discuss the current techniques uh, based on the research that you conducted using those primarily number 1 and number 3, but 2 if possible. And remember, um, dealing with a prison official, that could be a corrections officer. Or if you work in a facility, you might have access to some of those people. So anyway, in addition to the research or the person that you contacted, as well as the 2 additional ideas pursuant to number 3, to help accomplish rehabilitation being used, such as I mentioned earlier, mental illness, addiction, lack of education, and other problems within the prison system. Discuss some of those procedures that are utilized to help people. I've already talked about some, and be sure that the practices or procedures you propose are feasible and don't require an increase in funding or corrections manpower. Now, that's kind of, as they say, walking the tightrope type thing. I won't judge you too much on that. Do the best you can. Remember, it is going to be double space, APA formatted. If you interviewed someone, make sure you have the name of the person you interviewed. Or you could research a prison warden, go on and find a source on using Google or one of those, but be very careful in those situations, and the facility where they would work. Be sure to include citations in the body and a reference page, and also make sure you have a cover page. Okay, so let's look at the rubric. Okay, so as you know, we operate on the basis of mastery. So clear and comprehensive examination of current techniques being used to treat one of these areas that I talked about. And so you'll get 10 points for that. Make sure you have sources to support it. Clear and comprehensive discussion of the techniques used by the prison contacted or researched. That's why I said you can alternatively research it. And then finally, clear and comprehensive discussion of 2 other ideas other than the one that you used up here to accomplish rehabilitation as well. So that's what you could do in 2 to 3 pages. And you'll be able to get all of your points if you do that. You want to make sure that you have sources cited, because if you don't, you're going to automatically end up in emerging, because you're not going to have any sources cited. But you, as I said before, you should always be in the habit of citing sources for statements that you provide in your papers, because you get them from somewhere. I usually tell students don't rely on the textbook, but we don't have that issue with this course because there is no textbook. So any questions? Okay. So if you had any concerns or problems, you know, I know there are students that sometimes don't get the point that is an alternative method of just doing some research. They'll say, oh, I don't have the time to get a person interviewed. That's fine. But some people, it's very easy to do it. So either way, you could do it. But again, just remember that assignment is due Tuesday. That's why they put it in here like this, if possible. If possible. Okay. But otherwise, do conduct some research on these various roles: warden, prison administrator, or prison official, and that could be a correction officer too. Okay, so that's one of the written assignments. The other one is very simply the discussion post, and using these details and talking about the fact that prisons have various population sizes and their overcrowdedness and other issues, because individuals are recidivists. They go in, they come out, new people come in that never been in, and it begins to reach the point where it bursts at the seams. They don't have the money to build more prisons. But again, like I said, that's a very expensive proposition. Education is much better. So review the demographics for the prison systems of St. Cloud and Philadelphia, and compare and contrast differences between them, and provide at least two constructive suggestions. I see when they typed this, they made an error for how they could improve their efforts to rehabilitate people. Be sure to reference the name of the institution when you're providing the data. That's your initial post. In your reply post, respond to a peer's post with suggestions of how the prisons could improve their efforts to rehabilitate offenders is different from yours. Okay, and you use reference and I do. Well, you're going to have to use a reference anyway, because you're going to have to mention the name of the institution that you're referring to when you write this. Okay. So the key thing is take a look at the numbers that they have, the demographics, and the things that are included in this source here. And you can just click on it, and it will give you openly right here the information that you need to know about Minnesota's St. Cloud inmate profile, and it tells you a lot of different things in there, and you can utilize that information: types of individuals, types of offenses, and all of that stuff. Same thing with Philadelphia. Any questions? Okay, it's pretty straightforward, and both of those are due, of course, on Tuesday as well. And then your live classroom lecture phrase that I'm going to give you in just a few as well. All right, so let's look at the topic here. So we're going to look at a few of these things: sentencing and correctional philosophies, evidence-based correctional practices. We started talking about that already. And then finally, we're going to conclude with best practices. So there are a lot of goals, but for the most effective method is to help individuals by rehabilitating them. Notice it says that the philosophy of correction has changed over the centuries. We've moved from the control model: lock them up and throw away the key. That's the punishment, otherwise known as just deserts. In other words, you get the amount of time. It's like if you do the crime, you have to do the amount of time. And to the due process or fairness model, where fairness is involved, individual rights, and rehabilitation. And obviously, the change to rehabilitation is to cut into recidivism. As it says in the bold print here, the essence of the whole thing is the philosophy of a correction practice is to achieve rehabilitation, retribution, deterrence, or incapacitation. And talking a little bit about each of these. So we are now in the area of moving to rehabilitation. And so when we were dealing with retribution, where again, this was punitive, and we believe that a person, if you look at retribution down here, you will see, okay, here it is. Retribution, which we see today, focuses on just desserts. Just what I said. The punishment fits the crime. And so that is really not working very well. And then the other philosophy that you have that involves treatment of individuals, you're dealing with the issue of maybe locking a person up and throwing away the key, punishment. And so going through the steps of either dealing with retribution or either deterrence. Deterrence is the worst. It's believed that long sentences or time in jail deters people from committing crimes. Deterrence method is very ancient, and it doesn't, as the root word says, deter individuals from crimes. Incapacitation, finally, represents the stage that you can't commit the crimes against the public while you're incarcerated. Now, what you do is then commit crimes against individuals themselves, because a lot of people find themselves involved in fights or commit violence or some kind of criminal activity, maybe even using drugs and those kinds of things that are given to them. And so you're locked up for a period of time. And so it has been determined just moving forward is that rehabilitation is the best method, and making sure that we, again, the goal is to give the individual a new direction in life. You've heard me talk about the clock coming from 12 to 6. Do you remember that? Do you remember how that went? The illustration I gave? Yes. So for those who would look at this video and say, what is he talking about? You start at 12 o'clock. That's where you are in trouble. And then you work your way to 1 o'clock and you're getting better. And then 2 o'clock, you're getting better. 3 o'clock. By the time you get to 3, the problem there is that you can see where you came from and you know where you are. So you could have one eye on sliding back into the situation, and you move all the way down past 3 to 4. You're getting farther away from where you started, and then 5, and then when you get to 6 o'clock, you're at 180 degrees. So just by way of explanation, from 12 to 3 is 90 degrees, and then from 3 to 6 is 90 degrees, and 90 plus 90 is 180. So that's why we don't tell people to do a 360. If you tell somebody to do a 360, what you do is you bring them back around to 12, coming up from the other side of 6. And so the point is to go on 6 and keep going further and further and further away from your situation. Eventually, you develop a style and a way of life that will give you a new lease on life, whether it's rehabilitation from drugs or alcohol or an education, or you've given a vocation, or you've gotten a job. The point of the matter is you've changed the thinking of the individual and thus their actions. Okay. And we have to be, as it says, fair about it. It says that corrections had a duty to treat and rehabilitate, not to be vengeful. Or the other methods that I was talking about, deterrence, and um, uh, the retribution and capacitation, those pretty much all were like punishment. But then we recognized finally that we need to be able to help people to go a new direction. That's why the system requires now that those individuals who become correction officers and jailers are now required to have at least an associate's and some even a bachelor's, because at first it was you could get the job as a person right out of high school, and you weren't as professional in terms of your functioning. But then you turned into counselors and things like that. These are things you learn while in college to help you utilize the rehabilitation method to help individuals. All right. So look at what happened on the way to getting here from the 60s. There was an individual rights emphasis where individuals had mandatory rehabilitative treatment, and you had the requirement of providing education or training by the government. And some people didn't like the idea of providing rehabilitative efforts um, to help individuals or force them to um, go in a new direction when they came out. And it also says government was not trusted during the 60s, which added to the fact that correctional institutions could not prove that their efforts to rehabilitate were stopping or deterring crime. It was very, very, very resistant in terms of the system to accept that. Another reason why is because there were many people who felt like these individuals are being given free educations, they're given opportunities to uh, job training and stuff like that. And there were all kinds of things that happened. And so with the situation happening in the 60s, dealing with the disturbances that take place, I grew up pretty much in that civil rights era where there were issues that were um, developed inequities based on the race, gender, and class um, that created safety problems. But in the 70s, we began to move closer and more towards dealing with individuals to change their directions in life. Then it talks about one of the problems about how the judges could no longer consider the offender standing before them, who grew up in a dysfunctional environment which caused their antisocial behavior. And so now the judges had to follow guidelines to be fair about sentencing across the board and to help individuals. Again, it was felt that it wasn't their problem to try to help these individuals, but many began to recognize that it is most important for us that we do things to help individuals. That's why we got to things like restorative justice, where we try to help individuals to go in a new direction. Okay. So rehabilitation is the one that's standing now. That's the one that you guys are now functioning under, that will go into corrections. So the evidence-based correctional practices pretty much have to do with the ability to be able to provide resources, again, relating to education, treatment for the abuses of alcohol and drugs and things of these. All corrections individuals, from correction officers all the way up to wardens, it says team up to contribute to the goal of prisoner rehabilitation. That's what I was saying earlier. So we don't simply believe it is our role just to lock them up, feed them, and clothe them and shelter them, but also to give them something so that when they get out of prison, that they won't come back, or should I say, minimize the possibilities of them returning. And that's what all of this stuff is here. Okay. Addressing the, as they refer to, as the criminogenic needs, identifying what factors by looking at the background of individuals. And then again, back to what I just said, I sound like a broken record, but it emphasizes the importance of rehabilitation, and that's dealing with what got the person in trouble in the first place, dealing with their substance abuse issue, and education, and I would even go to add employment opportunities available. If a person doesn't have a job or an opportunity to be able to have employment, they will resort to crime to survive. Look at what it says here, supports what I said earlier. Research shows that inmates who take advantage of educational opportunities while in prison are 43% less likely to recidivate. That's what I was talking about earlier. As again, it's a wise decision. And so now that's one of the important things that we deal with, is to bring individuals to the point of educating them, teaching them, giving them skills. And then it even talks about what I said earlier about secondary and even post-secondary educational opportunities, such as probation challenge that I was talking about earlier, that takes place. So the whole thing is to treat these areas, and you can see it highlighted, that you can reduce it down to the point that you as a corrections individual, recognizing that if you want this kind of a job, then you're going to operate as a social worker. You're going to operate as a teacher, even sometimes as a mentor, oftentimes as a mentor. You're going to demonstrate empathy. But remember, one of the things that is very important, and I've said this in my previous classes, that in the corrections courses, firm, fair, and consistent. You have to be firm, fair, and consistent. And those are important keys in dealing with this and taking care of individuals. All right. They talk about halfway houses. This again, 80% it says release federal inmates pass through halfway houses, and their standards of operation. Again, the goal is to provide and effectuate the needs of the individual, whether it's drugs, alcohol, lack of education, lack of skills and vocations as well. And then finally, providing simple things such as not just housing, employment, and school, but also things such as proper identification. You'll be surprised that many of these individuals never had a Social Security card. Why didn't they not have a Social Security card? Because they didn't work. You don't use Social Security for crime. You don't report your income from crime, so you don't file taxes. You don't need a birth certificate to be a criminal, but you do need all these different things such as IDs, and even in some instances a driver's license. And so the point of the matter is that before individuals are released into society, because one of the things that you have to have in order to get a job is a Social Security number, Social Security card. Again, you would be amazed at, if you ever worked in one of those kind of facilities, that people don't know, they've never seen their birth certificates, and they don't own you don't have to be driving, but a state ID card, even some photo identification. That usually that's the thing that people have who don't drive a car, and some people have both of them. I have a state ID card as well as driver's license, and in most jurisdictions, people have state ID cards as well. In your state, in Wisconsin, um, I know they have state ID cards because I have family that live in the Milwaukee area that I've had to help get those kinds of things that don't drive. So the key thing is that it's the corrections aspects to help those individuals to get a start. So we conclude with dealing with best practices, evidence-based, and we go all the way down to recognize that we have to recognize that we use evidence-based, because evidence-based practices are the results of research that we've discovered how to approach dealing with the issues that we've been talking about for this last hour. How to help inmates become successful. And the concept of using evidence-based practices hits all disciplines, from nursing to prisons and to policing. And so all individuals who work in these fields use evidence-based practices. Correction facilities in California apply best practices in search for, once again, there's that R word, more rehabilitative policies that prevent recidivism. Okay. So evidence-based, evaluated for the cost effectiveness and modeled for the highest risk and highest need inmates, improving rehabilitation. In other words, do it the cheapest way that you possibly can. But the key thing is to make sure that you are, as they say, thinking rehabilitation in every activity that those individuals are engaged in. And the more the mindset is for correction individuals to come in and realize that that's part of their job. As a matter of fact, that's the biggest part of their job in modern times, dealing with corrections. If you don't have these things, recidivism is still going to exist. So here are what the challenges are. The correctional institution can fall short in following the above three key principles for reducing recidivism. Does not effectively use all of its rehabilitation programs, or has a flawed approach to measuring program performance, which makes it difficult to determine whether existing program resources are being used effectively. What does all that mean? It very simply means utilizing all the resources that you have available to you to help individuals to be rehabilitated. Of course, though, remember, it's got to be based upon the reason why they're there in the first place, in other words, what they need. And so the government is starting to allocate monies to provide programs when individuals are incarcerated, which we've been talking about already, that help to reduce recidivism. It's going to be over and over and over and over given that it is very important to do what the person needs to minimize recidivism. That's the key. Get to know the individuals. That's what the system is supposed to do. Correctional facility must improve the use of its current rehabilitation programs. That's what I said earlier, maximize them, and making sure that everybody's playing that role. And so we conclude with talking about the fact that what we talked about earlier, knowing the factors that contributed to their behavior. And it says, to this end, the following factors should be addressed to show most likely who's to reoffend: antisocial behavior, personality, relationships. There we go. The criminal thinking, the mind of that criminal, to want to get over and not learn how to produce for themselves, make an honest living, so to speak. Poor family relationships, low or poor school or work performance, problems with, dare I say, again, drugs or alcohol abuse, getting to the bottom of these things. And it must be addressed. Otherwise, you're not doing anything at all. And the final paragraph kind of sums it up, everything we've been talking about. It says society is happy as crime rates decrease and states save money due to decreasing prison populations. We've already covered that. That's my number one statement. Cheaper to educate than incarcerate, and thus crime rates do decrease. And there is also reduced cost for public assistance as individuals get their education. That takes people off of that. And then they can obtain employment and don't require public assistance. That's another element that is beneficial. Teaching them a trade, giving them a degree, giving them an opportunity to learn how to use a skill. I know many people who are barbers that now will tell you that, yeah, they learned this skill in jail or in prison to start, and then they went on and got licenses even while they were in jails or prison. So we spend a lot of money to do that, but remember one thing: at the end of the day, the key thing is that people are not going to be incarcerated forever, and they're going to get out. And so we don't want them to come out bitter or angry, but we want them to come out with something that they didn't have, that they went in with, or addressing the problem that put them there in the first place. Again, alcohol, drugs, they have a mental issue, and we need to deal with those kind of things. So that's it. But remember, it's all about, at the beginning of the day, the topic and everything that we're dealing with is to provide resources to rehabilitate the individual. That's what this whole thing is all about. Any questions? Yeah, as they say, oh, professor, you spent the whole hour and all you went over was talking about the same stuff over and over. No, I talked about where we came from and where we need to remain. And we need to remain on rehabilitation. I have had many students, I have many students who are correction officers who told me that a lot of the things they learned in taking the classes that I did helped them to understand crime. Let me say something to you. One of the things that contributed to helping me to understand rehabilitation was the many individuals that I represented as a defense lawyer. I remember I said I was a police officer for 4 years, and I did little prosecution, but it was minor. But my biggest area, I learned how to connect with my clients, to communicate with them, to try to offer them an opportunity to deal with, even if they were found not guilty, I still would remind them to turn a new leaf and go in a new direction, because sometimes it's not what you do, it's your peers or who you hang with that can get you in trouble. Being, as you heard before, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so I learned that individuals, even the guy who killed both of my parents, this guy didn't have much education. He was a construction worker, and I found out years later that he never received a high school diploma. So it goes to some of the things I learned from starting with that, but I also learned that from my clients. As you have heard before in corrections class, that when we deal with sentencing individuals, and quite a few of our people end up dealing with being sentenced, eventually, even those who are acquitted that I've had have come back around and gotten busted because they thought, oh, good, I have a good lawyer, and they keep doing crimes, but eventually the numbers catch up with them, is that the probation department will do what we call a PSI, pre-sentence investigation, where we find out a whole lot of information about those individuals to try to find something. We have to operate on the basis that everyone has some social redeeming factors in their lives. I would even go out on a limb to say this, that the individual that is creating havoc in this country right now, who was our former president, he has redeeming factors. Unfortunately, he's a sick individual and needs to be treated for those things. And if you ever heard his niece talk about him, do you know who I'm talking about? Donald Trump's niece, Mary. Yes, her. And she wrote the book entitled "How He Became Who He Became," and it started from being enabled, starting with his dad, and teaching a person never to have a contrite spirit, never to demonstrate contrition, because that's for losers. Never admitting that they're wrong, that's for losers. No, it ain't. It's for people whose hearts, but if you are an individual who that's all that's been given to you, then you're going to be that. It's like I talk about the way that mushrooms are developed, and this is exactly how mushrooms are developed. And you can look it up and you'll see I'm telling the truth. I'm talking about from an agrarian growing standpoint. They're kept in the dark, and you pour manure over them. That's it. And they grow and become mushrooms. Excuse me. Unfortunately, that's what happens with individuals who find themselves in the criminal justice system, ultimately ended up with people in corrections, is that from the time they've been in their lives, they were kept in the dark about facts and truth, about reality, how to not know good social skills. They felt like it was easier for them to take your car through carjacking than to work, get an education, and buy a car, rent a car. But the fact of the matter is taken by force. They didn't have a clue. And it sounds very basic to us, but that's the reality of situations. Like I said again, even there are some people that are highly educated who have that. But remember, those individuals, you have to go back to the foundation of what's underground. You can give a degree to a person who has a foundation in them of doing shortcuts. Remember when we talked about academic integrity? in this program, in this school, is that if you are a student who doesn't have a lot of integrity as a student, you violate the rules, you don't follow the conduct in taking exams where it says you're supposed to do a closed book, and because nobody's around with you, well, it begins to catch up with you. First, it shows in your grades. Secondly, it shows in your overall performance. That carries over into your employment, into your life, and then one day the bars um, as well. So it's incumbent that we recognize that those of us who have healthy minds to help sick individuals, they have what they call for medical people what's called a Hippocratic, I think it's Hippocratic code, and it means that they are to help people, help to save lives. And as we see now with this pandemic going on. And so, well, Professor Wright, why are you talking about that? Because I'm just giving examples of why we recognize that those of us who are stronger, who have sound minds and education and knowledge, which is what I do. My goal is to help aim each of my students in 3 areas. I say it at the beginning of every class: to educate you in a professional manner, that you become professional, and to operate ethically. Ethical, professional, and educated. You remember that? Yeah. And that I have, as a professor, I take interest in my students. I'm empathetic with my students, and that goes with my experience in life. But the point of the matter is that we have to carry that over in our professional, whether we're law enforcement, whether we're an attorney, whether we are even a prosecutor, or even in terms of dealing with those kinds of issues. Um, Making sure that if you're a correction officer, that you do the things that we've been talking about. So rehabilitation. So that brings me to the end of this course. And so I'm going to give you a key word for today, or phrase. Any suggestions? See if you get it. I got one already in mind. You want to type it in the chat box? Ah! You're good. See, you know me. You know me. That's good. That's good. As I told my wife, I tell my students, I hope some of me rubs off on you. And my wife laughs whenever I say that. Well, she's been married to me 27 years, so I bet some of me has rubbed off on her too. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. We've imparted um, wisdom and knowledge to you guys. And that's my goal. And as a result of that, I see my students time and time again appear on the Dean's List and Honor Roll, which is a piece of paper that recognizes the sweat equity and time that you put into, and then that carries over into your professional life, and you succeed and climb up and become successful rather than unsuccessful. So, well, I hope I see. Oh, okay. Yeah, I usually teach in the bachelor's program constitutional law. I have not for a while, but I hope they bring it back for me to teach as evidence. But those are the 2 things that I usually teach is constitutional law, and they haven't really given me much more uh, beyond that, because they keep me pretty much in the associates program. But yeah, I have my favorite is constitutional law. I love constitutional law. It is um, you know, yeah, yeah. My degree is in political science, so it goes before even getting a law degree. So politics uh, is involved with constitutional law constantly. So, well, I'm not going to hold you anymore. Again, thank you, Kara, for being one of my regular attendees, and uh, it demonstrates in your work ethic and your performance. As I told somebody, I don't give good grades. I give credence to those who do the work. And like I said, it becomes a way of life. I have always been told by employers that I've always had says, one thing about you, Richard, you're the guy that will get there early and leave late. Instead of leaving, getting there late and leaving early, you know, unless there's a need for it. But no, get all you can. I love learning, learn something new every day. All right, I'm gonna say good night. Have a good break. What do you know what you're taking starting Wednesday? Art appreciation. Oh, wow. That's that's cool. So that means you completed all your criminal justice classes, right? For the associates, right? Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, now you're dealing with completing the core courses that are necessary for you to obtain your degree. That's the difference in this school and some schools that people go to. They just help you get a certificate, or it help you to get, and we do have that too, but our emphasis is on getting you a full, well-rounded education, because a degree can take you further than a certificate, and that's the goal. Because many of my students go on and want to become attorneys. Um, why? I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. As my wife says, you're kidding, kidding. No, I'm excited whenever students. So again, I'll make this final statement that if you guys need me, let me know. Reach out to me if you need a referral, educational opportunity further, like going maybe to get a master's or something, or even heading, dare I say, to law school. I have a little knowledge about that, but I'm always here to help. And as I say to my students, you're going to remain a part of me forever. And as I said, to that end, many of my students are friends of mine on Facebook, and will continue to reach out to me. Just remember, if you're my friend on Facebook, do not inbox me. I hate Messenger. And I tell my students, just use and keep my cell phone number that you have already, and keep it, put it in your contacts as a person, uh, as a future resource for to help. I'm here to serve and to help you guys achieve success. Good night, and stay safe. And I hope I see you in the bachelor program as well. Okay. Good night.